Welcome. I'm DC Robs, and today we are watching Hank Green's There's an Actual Reason You Can't Recycle Plastic. Now, it's funny, as he'll say later on in the video, that he's going to be changing this title multiple times. And in fact, he has. Because while I've been trying to set this up, and since I've watched it the first time, uh, he has changed it multiple times. But I thought this would be a good video to go over and have a conservative share his experience, or what a conservative thinks when listening to someone on the left talk. I think this will be very enlightening for the left. If you're on the right, feel free to disagree. I love arguing. So, without further ado, let's begin.
I do not know what the title of this video is. It might be The Reason You Can't Recycle Plastic Is Your Stove. Or
Yeah. So, yeah, he has changed it multiple times. But yeah.
The Permian Basin. Or The Power Plant Down the Road. Or Elon Musk's Grok. All of these titles are true. It's going to be interesting to see which one gets the most clicks. But they all point to the same very strange fact, which is that plastic recycling cannot compete with fresh new plastic because the precursor chemicals to fresh new plastic are basically free, not
Yes. Yes. I don't know if he already knows this and he's just playing it up for the video, because let me tell you something. Making these videos requires a lot of pseudo acting, I guess. A lot of training to remove filler words and dead spaces and stuff like that. So I don't know if he's just playing this up to, like, did you know? Or if he really didn't know that a lot of the stuff we make is actually byproducts of other things. It is surprising how efficient capitalism is. I don't know if you know, the old Model T cars were originally made out of wood. And in the process of making the vehicle, you would produce all this sawdust and all this wood byproduct. Well, instead of just letting it go to waste, what did he do? He found a way to turn his waste into a viable product, all on his own, which I believe became charcoal, and I think they're still around. Uh, but yeah, if you're already producing something, there's no point in throwing stuff away if you can just make another product out of it. So in this case, we're talking about plastic, and he says the chemical formula. I keep forgetting it, but yeah, I already knew this. I'm going to assume he did, and he's just playing this up. But yeah, let's continue, because this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. He seems to be shocked by this.
metaphorically, but geologically, and kind of economically free. Like they come out of the ground, whether or not you want it, for free. I was just down on the Gulf.
Yes. Like I said, in this case, it's the plastic material. With the T, or the Model T, it was the wood shavings. But it's not just those companies. This happens over and over and over and over again, where the company produces a waste product at such ridiculous quantities that they end up being able to sell the waste to power other things. So that's why it's so frustrating to a conservative when you hear the left complaining about something, and it's like, okay, well, sure, maybe this is a problem, but give it enough time, there'll be enough waste of it that we'll find something to do with it. For example, right now they're looking to figure out what to do with nuclear waste. How can we repurpose what we thought was trash and give it new life? So yeah, it happens all the time. Yay, capitalism.
Gulf Coast of Texas, and we kept driving past these amazing, gigantic, kind of beautiful, to me anyway, chemical plants. I know that no one else.
No, they are beautiful, because imposing order onto chaos is glorious. It is mwah. That's why when we see things in straight, neat lines, it makes our hearts flutter. It's because it's beautiful. We've taken chaos, imposed our will, and added structure to it. Yes, it is feats of American engineering. Um, Listen, I'm not a nuclear engineer, um, but you can see old uh, reactor compartments and you compare them with new reactor compartments, and knowing nothing about what they are or what they do, you can see one is more beautiful than the other, and it's because it's the refinement, it's the better order that you're putting on or putting into the system, and that's always it is always beautiful.
feels that way. But look at this is crazy. It is amazing what we build. And part of the reason why a lot of this infrastructure is here and why there keeps being more of it and why a lot of the world's plastic begins here in South Texas is because this is where a huge chunk of the feedstocks for plastic come from. And down there on the Gulf Coast of Texas, a company might be able to buy a barrel of ethane for $2. If that seems like it is cheaper than a barrel of fresh water, you're right. Of course, that does not include the cost of the barrel. There are very few barrels involved here. But even then, how in the world could this stuff be so cheap? And this dirt...
That question makes me upset. And maybe I shouldn't be upset. Maybe he's bringing awareness to people who otherwise wouldn't know this. Which, I mean, obviously he is. But this is... We don't do anything just because, right? Throughout all of society, we do things to solve a problem. And 99.99999% of the percent of the time, the problem we solve is better than the problems that come after the solution, right? Excuse me. There's tons of things. The automobile, for example. Yeah, it consumes gas, and we have to frack, and we have to put in oil pipelines, and the oil pipelines leak, and it's terrible, and it's horrible. Except, you know what's worse than that? Horse shit. You know what's worse than that? People dying of malnutrition. It's the problems that can be solved almost always outstrip the cost of making the solution. That's why we'll get into it later in the video.
Cheap price for ethane from like $2 to $10 per barrel significantly depresses the price of virgin plastic. Is the reason why plastic is so dirt cheap. But why? Why is ethane so cheap? I can explain this to you. So when I think of the reasons why plastics recycling probably doesn't happen, the biggest thing I hear is just like evil, like they're taking all...
Okay, that is a problem. Because if you listen to the conservatives, you know what we say? It's not cost effective. It's ridiculous. It costs too much money. You're taking energy and you're wasting it converting this stuff into plastic again when we have so much waste plastic already that we need to fix. Well, not waste plastic, but waste precursors. It's a waste of time and energy. I don't know where this focus the left has developed. But there's three pillars to being green. It's reduce, reuse, and recycle. And they have spent too much time focusing on recycling, and not enough time on the reusing. That, and while there's argument to be made, we're not reusing the waste products. We're not letting them become waste. We are not doing like mass slaughters of animals and just taking like the skin and leaving the rest of the body to rot. We are making use out of every single part of the animal. In this case, the oil. But yeah, it's not because we're evil. It's not because people are just interested in making a profit. We genuinely are doing the best we can with the resources we have available, and that's all there is.
all the plastic, and they're like, you should recycle it, but then they're not recycling it because they're bad. But of course, the fundamental reason why plastics don't get recycled is cost. So the pellets from recycling cost more than the pellets that are brand new. And that.
How do we measure cost with money? If you found a way to generate more energy per cost, then you would have you would have broken like the thermodynamics laws, right? If I could generate more value than it costs, like for energy, specifically energy, right? That's mostly how all capitalism works. Is I value at X, someone that values this at X plus, so I then sell it to a person for X plus, lose the X but retain the plus. But if I could generate more energy than I put into the system, then we're breaking laws here. Okay, like that's not how that works, and that's reflected in cost.
That seems a little bit weird, but there's a bunch of reasons why. Sorting is really hard. Sometimes there's colors in it, and those get mixed together. Sometimes bits of other plastics get in, and they degrade it. Sometimes when the plastics get super hot, that can degrade the plastics and make them less good. You also have to take this like dirty stuff and make it food grade again, whereas if you make it from scratch, it doesn't have anything but plastic in it. But really at the root of it here, nobody's surprised by this. Recycling plastic is losing to virgin plastic because virgin plastic is cheaper. Meat? Ethane. Well, actually, first meet methane. Methane is the thing that we call natural gas. This is what we burn in natural gas plants. And ethane is what happens when two methanes get stuck together. Ethane is, I think, the most common of what we call the natural gas liquids. You can do some fairly simple chemistry to ethane to make it into ethylene, and then that can polymerize into polyethylene, which is what like plastic grocery bags are made out of. And you can also do like a little bit of further chemistry to make.
I just want to pause right here. So all these processes requires energy. You might be one of those types of people, and I honestly hope you are. One of the types of people that likes to carry one of those canvas bags. Well, the amount of energy, the time that went into the growing or the gathering of resources for that bag, processing it into a fibrous material, sewing it, and then transporting it to you, and then you transporting it back and forth. The amount of actual energy that went into that process compared to the process of a plastic bag is absurd. I don't remember what the numbers are offhand, but you have to use that canvas bag hundreds of times to even break even on just using a plastic bag. And that's bad for the environment. I know that there's a limited energy in the system. Don't take it out doing stupid stuff. Another common example is metal straws. Sounds nice. I guess turtles aren't getting it in their noses as much, which, okay. But the amount of energy you pulled out of the system to make that metal straw, that, let's be honest, you're probably only going to use 10 times if you're really dedicated, does not equate at all to even 1,000 plastic straws. This is the reduce part, by the way. Reduce the amount of energy you use. Let's continue.
PET, which is both, I think, the
Oh boy. We are 2 minutes and 38 seconds in. I should probably let more of this play.
Most common form of plastic and the easiest form of plastic to recycle. This is the stuff that soda bottles are made out of. Most single-use plastic starts out as ethane that comes out of the ground along with methane. But here's the thing, nobody is drilling for the ethane. People want the methane. Because the thing about methane is you can only use methane once, because the whole purpose of methane is to burn it. And over the last 20 or 30 years in the US, for a variety of reasons, we have become very methane hungry. We use it all over the place. We always have. So if you turn on a gas stove, that's methane burning in there. Probably it might be propane, but it's probably methane. We also burn methane to heat our water and our hot water heaters, to heat our homes and our furnaces. But like the biggest thing that we use methane for is to generate electricity. We've shifted largely away from coal and into methane. This is on the whole good. It's better for air quality.
Yes. Thank you. See, we are taking steps to make the environment better, right? And it is, in fact, partly because of people like him who are driving the conversation forward about keeping the environment clean. I grew up in Ohio, and there were multiple jokes about catching Lake Erie on fire. No one wants to live in those conditions. So people need to be doing what he does. We need to have a group of people who care about the environment. And as the environment gets worse, that group of people will grow until it reaches a tipping point, at which point those problems can be addressed. And then that pool of people will shrink and we can move on to other problems. That doesn't mean those people or that core group of people should ever leave. Um, they should just not be annoying. And I think that's a big problem that environmentalists have right now is that they're being really annoying, and they should stop that. They're hurting their own cause.
Like much better for air quality. Methane burns very cleanly. We also get more energy per unit of carbon dioxide produced. Now, in the short term, this might be worse because some methane leaks out and it's itself a very potent greenhouse gas. But we don't need to talk about the details. Methane is a really big part of how we generate electricity. That share has been growing over time, both because we do and should prefer it to coal, but also because we got a bit of a surprise, which was called shale. So you can imagine hydrocarbons being trapped in a variety of situations inside of the earth. Sometimes it's like a big pool, like literally a big reservoir of gas or oil. Much more common than that, you have like loose rock that you could think of kind of like a sponge that is holding onto it. But you know, the sponge is getting squeezed by the planet's pressure, and you know, you can get a lot of it out by just pumping it out. But shale is not like that. It's not like a
There's tons of tons of different ways. He's talking about shale, the Venezuelan, or not, I don't know if Venezuela has pools. Let me take that back. Um, but there are places where you can find it in pools close to the surface. That's what we had in Texas at first. We drained all of those. But then you also have the tar sands that they have in Canada. And those, each one have different processes to extract the hydrocarbons from. Um, but they're all worth getting for the most part. As long as it's cost efficient, they're worth getting.
sponge. Shale is like trying to get oil and gas out of like a marble countertop. And for a long time, that didn't seem like a thing we could do. But then we invented horizontal drilling and fracking, and we had this explosion of US natural gas production, which we are still in the middle of, and which we are not going to stop doing because suddenly we need way more electricity than we ever needed, both because we're electrifying certain things like hot water heaters and furnaces and our cars, and also because apparently we need to spend $500 billion on NVIDIA chips and run them all of the time.
And we're behind because environmentalists wouldn't let us build more nuclear power plants. Now, some of the problem is NIMBY is not in my backyard. Fun fact, I work in the nuclear industry, um, and it is ridiculously safe. I'll talk about that more later, but I don't, you know, let's watch this.
But point is, shale wells don't just produce methane. They produce tons, like more than typical, of natural gas liquids, especially ethane. And you cannot make a shale well produce only methane. It's going to cough up that ethane whether you want it or not. The result is that the shale boom meant a massive oversupply of ethane. Now, there are a number of things that you can do with ethane. You can certainly turn it into plastics precursors, but you can also do two other things with it. One, you can just shove it down the pipeline with the methane, take it all the way down to the point where it's going to get burned. This is probably happening right now in your home. It's likely that there's methane burning in your home. It's likely that there's a little bit of ethane in there with it. But you can only do that so much, and I'm not going to pretend
We do that with a lot of waste products. So, like, mining, for example, it's not uncommon to, once a vein is taken up, you just have a massive hole in the ground, and you're just like, well, fill it up with waste. You make do with what you have available at hand, and space is a valuable resource. Um, so yeah, you pump it. I already knew this, but he's going to go over it pretty soon. You can actually use that technology to do geothermal, because you may not necessarily have the ability to, touch a hot spot like next to volcanic activity. But rock's heavy, and pressure gets really hot real quick. So dig a hole, run a line horizontal to the surface, dig another hole back up, run a pipe all the way through, so that way you can create a circuit, and you can use convection just to have this water go through and turn a turbine or whatever.
I understand why, but apparently you can only put so much ethane into the pipe before things start to break. And so if there's nobody there to buy the ethane as a plastics precursor, and you've got too much to shove it down the pipe with the methane, you can flare it, which means that you burn it. You just burn it on site. You don't want to release it into the environment. It's not a good thing for the environment.
No, it's not. And unfortunately, like, it would be really awesome if we could just store all of this. Like, what's the old saying? What's the difference between medicine and poison? The dose. That's the same thing with a lot of stuff. Space is a valuable commodity. So in an ideal, perfect world, all these resources that they're gathering, they could just pile up somewhere. And when we need it, or when we find another use for it, we could pull from that pile. But that space is valuable wherever that space may be. So it's just cheaper and easier to flare it. And that's sad. But again, if that's what the economy dictates, that's probably what's the best thing we can do with it at the time is.
So you just light it on fire, and you've seen flares. That's what those flares are. I mean, if you see a flare, it might be ethane, it might be methane, it might be a number of other things. But that's one of the things you can do with it. And then it's wasteful, and you get carbon dioxide, and you get nothing out of that emission of carbon dioxide, but it's better than just releasing the ethane. But here's the thing. A lot of governments, including the US government, control how much you can flare. So it might be that you are producing so much ethane that you cannot flare it, and you cannot send it down the pipeline, and if you can't sell it, you have to shut down the well. They hate shutting down the well. If there's still methane down there, if there's still oil down there, that's money in the ground. And so if you can't send the ethane down the pipe, and you can't flare it, and you can't sell it, you have to shut the well down. So it doesn't matter if you're making money on the ethane. You just need someone to take it away from you. And so, since fossil fuel companies often want to sell ethane at rock bottom prices, petrochemical companies are going to take that, and they're going to process it into a number of things. And the easiest thing to turn ethane into is ethylene, that then goes through more chemistry to become a plastic. That's not responding to the world's demand for plastics precursors. This is responding to ethane oversupply, because you can't get the methane without getting the ethane.
He seems genuinely like, wow, what an epiphany. And that's terrifying to me. I love, for the record, I love Hank Green. I've been watching his stuff since I was a wee lad in middle school. It breaks my heart that he is not a fan of conservatives. But I understand the importance of his perspective. I just wish he would value the other side's perspective too. He might have already known this stuff if he would have, talked to a little bit more conservatives. Or a couple more conservatives.
It's just there for free. And sometimes it's worse than free. It's actually causing a problem if you can't find someone to take it. And so, as you might expect, we have an explosion of extremely cheap plastic. Ethane, pennies per gallon. Ethylene becomes extremely cheap. Polyethylene becomes cheap. The precursors for PET plastics.
Be careful, Hank. It sounds like you're learning supply and demand. You know what happens after you learn about supply and demand? You don't support socialism anymore.
Become cheap. The US becomes a huge exporter of virgin plastic and plastics precursors. And then a new price floor for plastic is created. A floor that recycling, even though technology in that space has been advancing over those same 20 years, even though recycled feedstocks for plastic are cheaper than they've ever been, recycling cannot keep up with the continuous drop in the price of plastic feedstocks. So from what I can tell, and I'm not an expert on this, but I think that like brand new polyethylene that just came from ethane that was brought out of the ground costs like 30 to 40 cents a pound to make at the Gulf Coast of Texas. Recycled costs like 60 to 90 cents per pound. Even if recycling were perfect, it is competing with a material whose feedstock is basically trash. And yes, unrecycled plastic is also trash, but it's trash that's like distributed around and it's got stuff in it and there's a bunch.
It is a waste product. It is not trash. The plastic after it's made is trash because we haven't found a efficient way of turning it back into a product that is cost effective. Hopefully with future technology, we can turn around and turn our landfills into mines so we can extract value out of it again. And I'm sure that's within 100 years, that's what we'll be doing. As of right now, it's just not cost effective.
Bunch of like glue on it and it maybe has colors in it. But there is like a little bit of good news, which is that PET plastics, which are like the soda bottle plastics, these are easier to recycle. And the costs between the recycled pellets and the brand new ones is closer. It's to the point where I could see a possibility where if we use less natural gas and so ethane gets more expensive, if technology for recycling gets better and so recycled feedstocks get cheaper,
So the goal should not be to use less natural gas. The goal should be to generate enough energy that we can achieve every goal we ever think of. Like, why isn't the Sahara green? Why is there so many deserts in Texas? It's not enough water. Crazy, considering the world is 70% water. If we could desalinate and figure out what to do with the brine that's produced afterwards, if we could have the energy to do that, we could green the Sahara. We could green every desert on the planet. We just don't have the energy. So the goal should not be to stop using natural gas. The goal should be to produce as much energy as we possibly can from every source. So that way it's cheap and readily available, and we can give airplanes to everyone, and that's what our goal should be. It shouldn't be to get rid of natural gas. It should be getting everyone in the world a great standard of living. That's what at least I want. I want everyone to have an amazing life. I want everyone to have air conditioning. Okay? Out of all the things in the world that I love, air conditioning is at the top. And there are people in this world that live way too close to the equator who do not have air conditioning. And that is a humanitarian crisis.
Could get to parity at some point. That's true for PET plastics. It seems kind of impossible for polyethylene. It's just so cheap to make polyethylene. And as I was making this video, I was feeling kind of hopeless about this whole thing. Like ultimately the reason why plastics are so cheap and why recycled plastics can't compete is a thing that's not going away.
Yes, reality is never going away. It's with us forever. Supply and demand, the laws that govern the universe will not change. I'm sorry.
Fracking shale for natural gas so that we can power the AI data centers, so that we can heat our homes, so that we can have stoves that have little blue flames. I've made a video about this before, but we really should not. If you have the opportunity, next stove, don't do that.
Yeah. So I've watched a lot of his stuff. Unfortunately, I disagree. I don't like it. I don't cook. I'm fat and eat out and am lazy. I'll be honest. But I come from a family that loves to cook, and they do not like electric stoves. They 100% prefer the gas because just they can just control, just off, on. There's no like, it is no longer heating the product because with a lot of electric, it has to heat up the material that then heats up the pot that heats up what you're cooking instead of applying the heat directly to the pot. Again, I don't have a dog in the fight, but is this problem something that needs to be addressed? No. And we really need to to focus down. Um, I love you guys. I love you guys on the left. I really do. I want you guys to be strong, um, strong advocates for what you believe in. I just, you guys have a tendency to be like a child with a ball, and you will chase that ball down straight into traffic and not have any concern about the repercussions. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes you get turned into a little kid pancake. So
It's bad for indoor air quality, and also eventually we are going to get off natural gas. Why would we be burning methane in our homes? That's weird. So I thought basically my conclusion was going to be like, we can't recycle plastic for a functional reason, which is that there is an artificial depression in the price of brand new plastics. But then,
hold on, wait a second. Let's go back. Let's listen to that again.
for a functional reason, which is that there is an artificial depression in the price of brand new plastics.
No, this isn't artificial. This is a real depression. Like, there is a game. Oh my god, you guys like board games? I know you do, because I'm a nerd, you're a nerd, and I've had to hang out with you nerds all the time. There's a game, beautiful game called Power Grid. Play that game. In that game, you actually end up generating waste, and the waste has a cost. Until there's enough waste generated that someone can actually turn that waste, burn that waste into more fuel. It's great. It's fantastic. This isn't an artificial depression. This is a real depression that people are taking advantage of the surplus and turning into a product.
But then I watched a video from another YouTuber, and he was talking about ways that technology might make it cheaper to recycle plastics. And that gave me a little glimmer of hope. And you know what I did? I reached out to him and I said, hey, Matt, would you like to chat? Because I've never talked to him, but I watched his videos for ages. And he said, yes, and this is my new thing. I love it so much. If I get to talk to cool people for a living, I will take that opportunity. Everybody, here's my chat with Matt Farrell. When I was making my video, a little bit hopeless about this whole thing, and I watched your video and I was like, well, maybe.
Don't be hopeless. Man, we're here for you. All right? Listen, I know you don't like conservatives. But I promise you, we need each other. We need each other, man. It's how we make society as freaking awesome as it is because you guys do what you guys do, and we do what we do, and we cover each other's bases. Don't be hopeless, right? Just quit trying to undo forward momentum. That's it. We take steps forward. Don't take steps back. Just keep driving forward. Keep going.
Not just we need to get the price of ethane up, but we could get the price of recycled plastics down with technology. And I was like, that's great. And I want everyone to watch this video, and you should. It's linked in the description. But here is Matt Farrell to tell me about this video. Hi.
Hello.
We've never met. This is so cool that we...
This is the first time.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Welcome. I just yelled at you a little bit.
But I appreciate it because I have the same exact feeling when I read about this stuff, and I've been learning about plastics. It makes you want to... If I had hair, it would have been pulled out. It's just like... It's infuriating. So these technologies, which are hopefully going to reduce...
There's an interview of a North Korean defector. And... I don't know if I recommend watching it. There's so many. Just pick one. They're horrible. Hey, find out that socialism's bad. God, they're so horrible. But he is walking home from the store, and his dad made him buy, I think it was liquor or something. But as he's walking, he's a child, and he ends up tripping. And when he trips, the glass breaks. And he talks about how he wished for a glass that didn't shatter. And then when he defected, he found plastic. Sorry. The point is, there's suffering in this world that doesn't need to happen. Uh, and most of that suffering comes when. Oh, there's a bug in here. Most of that suffering comes from us trying to control each other. And that's the biggest problem. Personally, I think that's why it's the first book, or the first story in Genesis is the creation myth. And then God giving us free will and telling us, hey, don't touch that fucking tree over there. Because if God couldn't make Adam not do something, what makes you think you can make someone do something? And I know you're not Christian. It's a fairy tale. Whatever. The point of the story is still there.
How much energy it takes to do the recycling, make it more cost competitive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also have to have policies to help support them and incentivize them to try to kind of like give it a level playing field so that it has a chance to mature and hit that mass scale to become cheaper.
Making policies to try to reach objectives sounds like a good idea. I am a huge fan of bounty systems. We did it with the airplane. We went, hey, we want this. And we just slapped a huge bounty on it. And like, if you're the first one to get it, you get this much money. I think that's way better than penalizing people, like tax, like essentially a sin tax. Just because you're trying to raise the price of something. I think that's evil. Because essentially what that means is, oh, you're poor, you don't get this thing. Not a fan.
It would be great. Yeah. We've come a ways. That's some of the other research I did. So I was like, so ethane has been getting cheaper and cheaper as the shale fracking boom has happened and as we've converted a lot to natural gas from coal. But we've also been doing things that are in the market now that have made things cheaper. But a lot of them are mechanical. So they're like using special lasers to identify what kind of plastic something is really fast, or having like AI assisted robot arms sorting the recycling. But what you were talking about is not mechanical, it's chemical.
Yeah, when we were digging into this, it's like, is there a ray of hope? And yeah, I mean, there's some new research out of like Northwestern University that we were looking at, which can break down my video. I laugh about it every time I say it, but PP, which is polypropylene plastics. It basically, their technique is using a nickel catalyst and some hydrogen, and they can crack it apart and break it down into kind of some component parts that can give it a second life for something else.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about this is because the PP is difficult to separate from the other types of plastic, like polyethylene. It's very difficult because they're the same kind of density. So when they're trying to sort them, like they grind them all up and they try to sort them out, you can't. It's
right, because that's one of the main systems is like you float it in water in various ways. So like density separation is as old as time.
Listen, if you're smart, you get to do with your life is your life, and you do with your life as what you want to do. However, it does make me a little sad. So I have an uncle. He is a chemist, and listening to him talk makes me realize how much science is grunt work. It's not like it's not all sitting down in deep thought, having thought experiments and numbers whiz past your head. It's not that. It is that, but a lot of it is also, all right, let's change this by 0.001 degree. And then run the test. And that test takes 12 hours. So let me babysit this machine. And then I do that over and over and over and over and over again. And I say grunt work because maybe you disagree, but that seems like that's what that is. So to have people dedicated to this cause of trying to find a solution to something that doesn't necessarily need a solution yet, it seems like digging a well in the ocean kind of thing.
But if things are the exact same density, then density separation doesn't work.
The thing that's exciting about this one is it uses nickel, which is way cheaper as a catalyst versus pick your metal.
We have a lot of nickel that's sitting around. We don't have that much to do with it. It comes out of the ground along with other stuff just the way that ethane comes out with methane.
And it's going to last a long time. They said it can be recharged. I think it's up to 3 times. So it's going to
Nerds learn about supply and demand.
Last a very long time
Yeah.
in this process.
This is my interpretation of what you said. Like they'd tested 3 times and they hadn't tested 4 yet.
They could go beyond, yes.
Yeah. Who's got the time? You got to publish. Stop waiting around. So one of
So I think that's important insight that a lot of people on my side of the aisle don't have. I'm not saying that conservatives don't exist in the intellectual spaces, but the idea of talking about research papers and like the pressures for publication and like getting stuff out the door, that doesn't necessarily factor in unless it's in a negative context, which I mean usually is, but it's not usually nefarious. Just wanted to point that out.
the thing that I always talk about, I don't actually have a plastic bottle near me, but I always think about is when you like have a plastic bottle that's at least 4 plastics. So there's the